What is up, guys? Hope you're having another good week. This week we're talking gain structure. And by gain structure, I mean the idea of getting the most level and cleanliness out of your input while maintaining the golden rule of never peaking or distorting on your source due to too much level. And when it comes to managing gain structure, there's kind of two lanes I like to think through. First one is source to console and everything involved with that. And then once you're at the console, going through your signal flow to your mix out. So let's start at the source, and I'm going to talk through just basic band inputs and kind of ways to think through that. So first one is drums. And the main issue that I think you'll have with drums is when they're not hitting all the drums with the same intensity, you might have to gain certain inputs up more, and the problem could be raising the noise floor around those drums. Second input I'm thinking through is bass. And a lot of times the bass player might have too much signal coming through, and so you might need to have him back that down. Or on the flip side, if you're not getting enough and you go to gain it up, you might have some noise floor issues as well. And then I like to group keys and loops together because a lot of times you'll have a volume issue there where the volume either on the computer or the keyboard isn't up all the way. And so you wind up getting a little bit of hiss when you start to gain up the signal that can easily be solved by just bringing up those levels on the sources. With electric guitar, you're dealing with the guitar amp, and a lot of times you can either have too much level where it's kind of piercing and kind of blowing up the mic, or on the flip side, if you don't have enough, you might have noise floor issues of picking up things in the room you don't want to hear. With acoustic guitars, a lot of times if there's an electrical issue within the pickup, or the battery in the pickup is dying, you'll have to gain that up, and you'll wind up having a hiss or noise or a tinniness to the acoustic guitar. And then the last one I'm thinking through is a vocal, and that's all about the proximity to the mic. And if you don't have great proximity to the mic, you're going to wind up gaining it up and then have issues with feedback. So those are kind of the source issues I like to think through. The next side of things is typically your source is either going to a microphone or a DI. And so with a microphone, you want to make sure you you choose the right mic for the appropriate source so that your gain structure through that mic is appropriate. And same thing with DI. There's active DIs that give you a little bit more level, and then passive DIs that give you a little bit less. So you want to pick the appropriate DI for that. And then one other thing with DIs to be thinking through is a lot of DIs will have a pad on it. So if you have a source that's really blowing you up, putting in the pad can help with that. Or on the flip side, if you're having a source where you're not getting a whole lot, check the DI, see if the pad's in. If that's in, you can take that out, and that'll give you more signal. Lastly, to be thinking through is the cabling involved. Your 1/4 inches, your 1/8 inch, your mic cables. If you're having a low signal or noise on the signal, chances are there's a problem with the cabling, and so you can solve that by swapping that out. So those are the things I like to think through, and the golden rule that I like to just have is if you're gaining things up more or less than typically you should, chances are there's an issue with one of those areas. So let's go ahead and take a look at the console, and we'll see how you can manage gain structure on the console side. So I'm going to use our worship leader channel as an example. You can see here you have your analog gain. I typically try to live around -12 because that gives you a little bit of room for the input to grow without peaking, but you're still getting a good amount of level out of it. The other thing you're going to notice as we go down the chain, you can see that the gain drops, and that's something you should come to expect because with a high-pass filter, you're taking out low-end frequencies, and with a low-pass, potentially high-end frequencies. With EQ, you're generally taking frequencies out, and then with compression, you're compressing peaks, so you're lowering the level there as well. And so naturally, you're going to see that your gain's going to drop down signal flow. And so what I'm always thinking through is, where am I going to gain that back? And typically, I try to always choose the last compression in the chain. And so I'm going to boost the output gain there. And the reason I'm able to do that is because of how much we've lost. And you're going to see that's brought that back to where the original level was. And that's important for the applications. In our situation, we're running monitors from front of house, and so there's been times where the band hasn't been able to hear the input, but my gain's fairly loud and fairly prevalent. And so in order to do that, you can't gain it up anymore. You'll be peaking, so you need to be able to make that up somewhere on the back end. And so the last compressor in your line is usually the best place to do that. And so from there, then our fader level is what will drive how much we're going into the subgroup. And then from the subgroup, the same deal. There's processing happening. You see it goes down a little bit, and so I might do the same thing, bump the compression output gain, and then from there we're going to our stereo out. And so Two other things that's just important about having good gain structure is being able to manage your actual fader positions and using that to get your fader position to where you're comfortable. And then lastly, being able to manage how much gain is coming out of the PA in relation to what's coming out of the console is something to be thinking about when you're having to be in a specific dB level. So having good gain structure can help you to manage that better and be consistent with what's coming out of the console. So the main thing I want you to take away from this video is that with gain structure, it starts at the source. Getting the source right, making sure the right leveling is coming out, making sure it's clean, pairing it with the right DI and microphone, making sure that your cabling is all functional so it gets to the console clean at the right level, and then setting your gain on the actual input to where you want it to be so that you can grow but also have enough gain for the different applications, and then keep that gain consistent throughout your signal flow so that you're able to get it where you need it to be. So I hope that was helpful. Next couple weeks we're going to be talking about EQ and the different types of EQs, the ways to use it. I'm really excited about that. So thanks for tuning in.